Chelsea vs Benfica is a fixture with a short but memorable history. The two have faced off 3 times in a competitive setting, with Chelsea beating Benfica on all 3 occasions. Once on our way to lift the 2013 Europa League trophy in the final, and twice in our famous 2012 Champions League campaign that saw us eventually beat Bayern Munich to win that trophy too. But Benfica will be full of confidence going into this game as they too just beat the German Giants, making this a close affair between two great European teams. So, how do Chelsea get the edge here? What do we have to do tactically in order to beat Benfica for a 4th time in a row? Well, we're going to talk all about that today, and it starts with the lineup. So, let's take a swift look at the Chelsea team that I would select for this game. I'll be putting our Chelsea side into our standard 4-3-3 to start with, and we'll talk about how this can vary in game in a moment. I expect quite a few changes from the ES Tunis game as we heavily rotated for that fixture. First up in goal will be Robert Sanchez once again. Jurgensen had a good showing last time out, but our number 1 comes back in for this one. The back 4 is going to be very strong. The first change sees Reece James come back in at right back. Next to the captain will be the centre back duo of Tosin Adarabioyo and Levi Colwill. Finally, over at left back will be Marc Cucurella after he was finally given a rest. Moving into midfield, I think we could see a very first choice selection all round. The deepest man will of course be Moises Caicedo. Ahead of him in the advanced roles will be Cole Palmer and Enzo Fernandez. That leaves just the 3 attackers, and this will be changing as well. It's back to our strongest lineup here with Pedro Neto and Noni Madueke on the wings, and of course last time's goal scorer Liam Delap up top leading the line. Okay, so here we have the two teams. Now, I've lined Benfica up in a pretty standard 4-2-3-1 that they've been playing throughout the majority of the tournament, with the majority of the players that kind of already played in those kind of starting roles. I think that this is going to be a really interesting kind of matchup stylistically because of the way that we play and the way that, specifically the way that Benfica kind of like to attack. I think it really benefits them in the way that we set up. Now, obviously, we play this 4-3-3, but it never ends up being that way in possession. We always tuck one of the players in, and in this certain setup where we have James on this right side and Tosin specifically on this right side, who likes to go into the centre, it'll be Marc Cucurella who kind of goes into this inside channel. So we're going to see a back 3 of Tosin, Colwill and James, and then we'll see either a 2 between Cucurella and Caicedo. We've sometimes seen that, or we'll see Cucurella get a bit higher and kind of join the attack and be on this channel, on this inside channel that we always kind of see him in, with Palmer and Enzo as these two kind of advanced players. They either play as dual 10s here, or we kind of, what we've been seeing in recent times is that Enzo is kind of the one that moves over to the middle and kind of is the one that can box crash and get into the area, and Palmer kind of plays as this right centre mid, right? So he can drop deep, collect the ball, and then kind of turn and go up forward, play it across the pitch, that type of thing. So we've been seeing that kind of diamond in a way for the majority of the time throughout this tournament. We keep seeing that this diamond present itself rather than the flat box. And obviously, again, Cucurella can get really high here. He can join up with Neto and, you know, just be a real nuisance as he always is. Now, the reason why I think this is an interesting matchup stylistically is because of the way that Benfica like to kind of set up with this 5-man attack at times, where they play with their wingers very, very narrow. They like to tuck their wingers in. Obviously, the main danger man here is Di Maria, and I think he's the one to focus on because they do focus on going on down the right-hand side of the pitch more often than not. So we can kind of focus on how this kind of plays out here. Obviously, Di Maria is a left-footed player. He's also very one-footed as a left-footed player, and he likes to tuck inside with the ball and kind of, you know, get onto his left foot for either shots or to create chances. A lot of the time he likes to take those kind of, you know, back post swinging crosses from the right side, so he's going to be trying to get on the ball as much as possible. And when they do this, they always force one of their fullbacks up the pitch, and this is normally Frederick Alsnos. He goes up quite high. He is a kind of an interesting profile of player he is, because he plays as a right back, he can play as a centre mid at times, in the right centre mid position, he sometimes ends up here. He's obviously can play in this kind of right wing back style at times too, and he kind of plays like a right wing back whenever he is deployed on this right side, in the fact that he's the one that always goes up and overlaps whenever Di Maria cuts inside, right? And what ends up happening is that obviously Sheldon here will kind of hold the width on the left side, Prestiani will kind of move into this position, and we get this 5-man attack across the kind of the face here. And the reason why I think this is really interesting stylistically is that you can already see from the way that we are set up with this three at the back system that this is really dangerous for our team. Them going around the outside is something that is very, very possible against this quite narrow back three. And with Caicedo obviously being this lone man here, if they are able to kind of get through our initial press with our kind of three midfielders up here, and Cucurella, for example, hasn't been able to get back, this presents a lot of danger. Now, I want to talk about the way that they do attack because those overlaps are very, very important. Now, so far in this tournament, we've seen Benfica play 3 games, and they were all very, very different, but all kind of showed the same similar things in terms of the way that they like to play. They had one game where they absolutely dominated the ball and won against Auckland. They had one game where they had basically none of the ball and won against Bayern. And then they had one game where they had about equal possession and they drew with Boca Juniors. And in all 3 games, there was one thing that was perfectly clear about this team is that they very much have a focus when it comes to attacking, in that they want to get down the wings as much as possible, and then they don't ever really cross the ball in to Pavlidis. That's not really kind of, he's not that kind of, target man centre forward that's always going to get on the end of things. It's more so they go for cutbacks, and he is just there to occupy defenders. He'll make a run to the front post or, to the back post and occupy a centre back, and it's these kind of players that kind of get around the edge of the box are the ones who actually get the ball in the end. For example, let's just say Sheldrup is here with the ball. This cutback from kind of this area into the centre of the box is something that they do all the time. And accompanied with this is that they've got these 2 midfielders, Barreiro and Sanchez, who are really, really eager to get up high and get into the box, as well as these kind of, despite them being these kind of deeper midfielders, they like to kind of, box crash, be the ones that are going to arrive late to get shots off. We've already seen that multiple times in this tournament with Sanchez. I believe he's got a goal from this. Barreiro's got 2 from doing this, I think. So yeah, they constantly are the kind of threats there, where they don't always try and play it across the face, for example. It's more so just going back to either the edge of the box or to the penalty spot, and that's kind of where their danger lies. We'll obviously have to kind of compensate by that by either getting out quicker to these kind of wide areas with either James or Colwill or Cucurella, who can get back from his advanced position, and also just doing a little bit of the double up, get Caicedo over here to stop Alcinous to just running straight down the wing and, causing issues. He can be on the other side too if he has to be, because obviously he can roam across the face here. And yeah, I think that's the main thing we kind of need to look out for. Obviously, Di Maria is a kind of a big danger man, but I think like they kind of use Di Maria as more like a decoy half the time, where he's the one that you expect to be the danger man, and when he gets on the ball, he kind of demands attention from your players. So your players will go to kind of, stop him from getting the ball, but it's then actually the ball in behind for this right side for Alcinous to run onto. That's the actual real danger. And once they're in behind, again, those cutbacks are really, really good from them. Now, the next thing which I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of things to look out for Benfica offensively is their set pieces, and specifically Otamendi. Now, Otamendi has been one of their highest rated performers in this tournament so far, and part of that is because of one thing that he keeps doing from set pieces. And though this hasn't always worked, it's almost kind of seemed to it kind of happens every single time they take a set piece, where he is going to be making, and I'll actually show it in this box because it's a bit easier to kind of show. But and Chelsea fans will understand this because we used to see this quite a lot with Thiago Silva, right? We see that front post kind of dart from the centre back across the as I said, across into the kind of area here, and when the ball comes in from a corner, he's the first man to get the ball, and whether that results in him just heading the ball in, which he's done already in this tournament, or kind of knocking it on for someone else in the box to then get a tap in, for example, again, another one of these 2, box crashing midfielders that like to do this quite a lot. He's always the one they try and pick out every single time without fail. He's always the man that they kind of look for, and for some reason, I don't know if this is mainly because obviously he's an aging player, he's, despite being quite a veteran, obviously ex-Manchester City player, very, very good quality player, for some reason he just goes a bit under the radar in terms of being marked in the box. He always seems to find the space, and again, it's very similar to Thiago Silva when he used to play for us, always making that front post run and always getting on the end of things. So that's just another thing we'll have to kind of look out for in this game. Now, let's kind of move on to talk about Chelsea specifically and like what we can do in our game plan in order to not only counteract some of these things I've just spoken about, but exploit some weaknesses of Benfica that I've picked up after watching their 3 games so far. The first thing which I wanted to say is that on the topic of set pieces, despite them again offensively being quite good from them, defensively they've been pretty weak to balls to the back post, especially from set pieces and especially when there's like a big centre back lurking at the back post. We've seen this happen quite often for Chelsea with Tosin. He likes to do this quite a lot where he'll stand at the back post for the ball to come in, and instead of actually going for goal, he'll be the one that kind of nods it across back towards his kind of teammates and try and get goals that way. That is something that they've been quite vulnerable to throughout this tournament so far, and I'm not sure if that's again a tactical thing or if they're just poor at marking, or maybe again this is just a coincidence, but it's happened a few times in their games and they have been caught out by it quite a lot. As this is something that we often like to do, I think that this will be kind of again something that Bernardo Cueva and the set piece team will be looking to kind of exploit throughout this game, in the fact that again, Tosin is a huge guy, very good vertical leap, very aerially dominant, and always has been. And I think that's something that we can really kind of deploy. That's the first thing I just wanted to say whilst we were talking about set pieces. That's the first thing I wanted to knock off. The second thing, again, kind of lends into our hands because Benfica have been caught out in the Boca game and also in the Bayern game by really tricky wingers and that kind of, stereotypical 1v1 wing play. And in general, they've just been defending the wide areas pretty poorly. And I think it's kind of because they have elected to, instead of kind of going out to meet wingers and, cause those 1v1s to happen, they like to sit off a little bit more and kind of sit in their own box and, absorb the pressure when the ball goes out wide here. And even though they will sometimes, Sanchez, for example, will come over here to provide some kind of press. They don't like really get tight and stop wingers from doing it, and it's led to, again, part of the reason why they keep conceding things at the back post is it kind of leads to this situation where players will be on this right side, for example, on the left foot. I've put Madueke here, Neto on the left side. This could be the other way around. We have been seeing that. Personally, I would like to see Madueke on the right side. I think he's just better there. And we've been seeing those kind of, loopy balls to the back post from these wingers because they're just not closed down quick enough. We've also seen, play kind of go around them because, again, they don't really go out to kind of meet wingers very well. And I think a tricky winger like Madueke and, for example, like Neto, in a system that is designed to make 1v1s, and I've spoken about this multiple times, but if you kind of need a refresher on how Enzo Maresca's system works, I do have videos kind of explaining how his tactics have worked from way back in the day, which I'll link in the description so you can watch that. But the kind of gist of it is that we are a team that likes to set up in a way that gets our players and gets our wide players specifically into 1v1 scenarios out like in these areas, not only to kind of open up gaps here for, again, these kind of midfield runners from Cucurella or Palmer to get into those kind of spaces, but also just to kind of create avenues for, like, cutting inside and getting there. And if our players can beat their men in 1v1s, then that kind of really spells danger for the opposition, because that's kind of what this whole team is designed to do. Once we kind of get past the player, for example, in here, and Madueke is kind of into this area, then we can obviously look for cutbacks for Liam Delap making those runs into the front post, or, Enzo, who will be box crashing and he can get the ball back. Again, kind of similar to how we said about Benfica with their cutbacks, we can also do that, but with our wingers rather than the kind of overlapping fullback. Because that's kind of the similarity between our two systems, is that whilst the 5-man attack that they have is kind of led by that overlapping fullback, we kind of have an overlapping winger. We like to play like our fullbacks, obviously, again, Cucurella tucking inside and being this kind of Di Maria-esque distraction here in the middle, and then it allows the kind of winger to be the one that's going to go forward and then cut across. It's similar in terms of like the actual setup and having the 5 men across the front, but just slightly different in the way that we actually do it and the personnel in those roles. Now we saw this happen to Benfica, especially in the Bayern game, when in the second half Elise came off the bench and he basically was allowed to do whatever he wanted. Anytime he got on the ball, they conceded a chance. Any single time that they were able to, Bayern were able to kind of pass it out from the initial press and then get around them and get the ball out into these wide areas, they just backed off and didn't really stop him in a way. They kind of just let him do whatever he wanted. And again, if it wasn't for Trubin in goal, who had a fantastic game in that game, they probably would have conceded at least 3 goals. And despite them winning that game, I think it's kind of clear from, again, the possession statistics and the chances created and things like that, that they were largely dominated in that game by Bayern. Let's not kind of sugarcoat it. They got a goal on a kind of against the run of play, and they sat on that, and they defended really well to be able to do that. But again, it was kind of Trubin stopping stopping a lot of the goals going in that kind of helped them get out of that. I don't think that that's a sustainable way to defend, personally. And against a team like Chelsea that again has a really big focus on wing play and a focus on getting it out to these wide areas, I think that could be a mistake that they make. Now, as I kind of alluded to a little bit there, Bayern in that game found it very, very easy to deal with the Benfica press, and this is something that they do like to do. When teams are building out from the back, they like to press high, even though it's not, a kind of Gegen press type, really heavy kind of front-forwarded press and really aggressive. They do like to put the pressure on at times, not let teams easily pass it around them. But Bayern found it really, really easy to do this, and more importantly than that, not just that they found it easy to kind of, pass it out and get it past players because they had committed forward, and then obviously, as I said, they kind of progressed it through the pitch and got it out to the wide areas, which weren't really defended well. The issue here is with kind of the high line that Benfica play. Now, I think that this is a really good tactic for teams to kind of put the squeeze on, stop them from being able to be comfortable. But the problem is when teams decide, you know what, we don't care about your high line, we're just playing it over the top instead. And that happened in this Bayern game quite a few times. It caused them a lot of issues. And I can't remember who it was in the first half, but there was a really, really good one-on-one chance in the first half from one of these simple balls over the top to a pacey winger that got in behind. Again, luckily it was saved by Trubin, so they didn't concede from that, but it was way too easy to do. And in this game specifically, if we talk about the personnel that we have, Liam Delap is an absolute menace when it comes to kind of getting on the end of balls that go in behind. That's like his bread and butter. And especially up against a player like Otamendi, who, again, is aging at this point. He's not the quickest. And Delap is obviously a player that likes to run down this channel more so than the left channel. So he'll be kind of up against Otamendi more. I think this is going to cause him so many issues if they kind of allow us to do this. We've seen from previous games in this tournament as well that Pedro Neto is another one that we can just play the ball over the top to and he'll get on the end of things and, just score goals because he's done that. He's been a bit of a menace. And we've shown, again, a little bit of kind of an evolution of this Enzo Maresca system in a way, because we were very much a team that didn't like doing this at the start. We were very much a team that only wanted to play the ball short. We've kind of evolved now into a team that will just say, hey, you know what, if you're going to press us this hard and we can't get out, we will play the ball long. Whether that's from Sanchez, who, again, his distribution has not been the greatest, but he will always try to play these long balls. The kind of main one is Colwell. When he gets the ball out in this wide area, he always looks for that ball down the channel, and that's something he's really, really good at. And again, with Pedro Neto running in behind, that could be an issue for them. And in general, the way that we like to kind of bait the press in a way, we're a team that really enjoys playing it around the back and trying to bring these players out. And you see that with the way that kind of Sanchez plays as well at times, where he kind of joins the back four, right? He'll join the back four and be this extra player here so that we have an extra option when the ball kind of, when we do get pressed. And once we get that one pass through this line, for example, to Caicedo or to Lavia, who's usually the one who kind of does this. I haven't put Lavia in the team because he played last game, but if we get this ball out here, then you can see immediately that once we're past this line, it's really easy for us to then kind of play it into Delap, who's been doing this kind of dropping deep to hold up the ball style of play recently, very similar to how Jackson would do this for us normally. And once he gets the ball and he can kind of, get the hold up play up against this man, for example, this would be Otamendi that he's holding off, and he can play it this way, then you can see immediately with this high line what the mistake is here, that if the ball does kind of bounce off Delap and get to Palmer, it's one ball in behind for Madueke or for Neto or whoever, and we're in on goal. And again, they do have some pacey players, like, again, Arsenis, Caderas on this left-hand side. Silva can get back with his recovery pace, and I've kind of singled out Otamendi because he's the one kind of player in this back line that isn't the quickest. I think that this is where the gap is going to appear. And I think that if we're going to be looking at specific targets, and specifically, we always talk about like press triggers and, players to kind of target with certain pressure and things like that. I think Otamendi will be the one to do that too. And I think specifically, again, if Delap is the one who's trying to go down this side, because he often does try and get into this kind of right channel rather than the left one, obviously being a right-footed player, I think that's going to really lend into our hands, the fact that Otamendi is on this left-hand side of their defence rather than the right. And yeah, and that's just another thing which we could hopefully be able to do against Benfica if they decide to play this way and play quite high up. Obviously, they could very well opt to play pragmatically, like they did in the second half of that Bayern game, and sit back on and kind of defend, and that would be a little bit more tricky for us. But if they are going to back themselves to beat us, which I do think they do, I feel like they are a good enough team to be able to cause us a lot of problems. So I think they'll back themselves to do really well here. and they do step on us with that confidence, I think that we could kind of use that confidence against them and, you know, play against, get the kind of ball over the top and into those areas that could really cause them problems. And I briefly spoke about press triggers and things like that in that last point. I did want to mention as well, I think this is going to be a game where we really benefit from playing aggressively in terms of actually pressing Benfica. They've kind of shown a bit of wobble at times when it comes to, you know, players kind of putting on the pressure, and, you know, we've seen some mistakes from Renato Sanchez on the ball, for example, him kind of, you know, dropping deep to collect the ball from his centre-backs, but then getting a press from behind by a player. Again, Caicedo is one who can do this, and kind of getting the ball taken off him, and that can lead to those transitional goals that we've kind of spoken about. And I think for the most part, we are going to get our goals in this game from transitions, whether that's from us winning the ball or from us kind of, you know, playing it through that kind of press that they like to do with this high line. I think the majority of our goals are going to come from that. I don't think that if they sit back and kind of, you know, absorb the pressure, that we're going to do as well as we would if we're kind of playing on the counter attack, even though we're a team that is designed to play possession based football, and that's kind of what we're really good at. I think that we've kind of seen in this new iteration of this team that with players like Neto and Delap and Madueke, for example, and Enzo obviously being the one who can play those balls in behind, who especially, we've kind of seen this evolution, as I said, into a more of a team that can play that style and play that possession-based football at times, but then if we are given the opportunity to play on the counter and play those long passes or play those transitional kind of attacks, we'll take those every single day of the week. And I think we need to kind of lend into that and lend into the idea that, hey, Benfica are a good team. They can play possession-based football. They will try and do it against us. Let's try and punish them for trying to be brave and, you know, take the ball off them when we can with that kind of high pressure, not make it easy for them to play it around us and then get it out wide for those cutbacks, for example. When we get the ball, we can spring the counter-attacks, try and get opportunities that way. And the final thing which I do want to touch on, just a thing for us to avoid, something for us to be a bit cautious of, is, again, I spoke about Otamendi obviously being a threat from set pieces. I don't want us to give away silly set pieces, and specifically, I'm going to call out one player for this, and that's Angel Di Maria. Now, for a lack of a better term, this guy is an absolute diving scumbag, and we've already seen that in this tournament, that he has gotten multiple penalties and multiple fouls from literally not being touched. We've seen how the referees have kind of operated in this tournament so far. They are giving soft fouls. They are not letting things kind of flow. They are being a bit, again, lack of a better term, bad throughout this tournament, and that's just another thing we kind of need to, you know, be careful of. Obviously, I've said that I want us to be this aggressive kind of pressing team. We can't be doing that in a way that's too aggressive and too kind of, you know, for example, Cucurella, we know how aggressive he can be. We can't be getting him really, really tight and allowing these set pieces, because again, even set pieces from like out here where it doesn't seem like much of a danger, they've been very, very good from, because Di Maria's delivery from those kind of sweeping in swingers to the back post has been very, very good, and or to the front post for Otamendi to then flick on has been so dangerous. That's something I would like to avoid. I wouldn't want to give them opportunities where they don't need it, because they will very much be a team that if they do get that first goal, like we saw against Bayern, they are capable of getting that first goal and then sitting back on their kind of lead and defending that lead. And obviously we've struggled to break down teams that do that at times. That's been a weakness of Chelsea at times. And I said, stylistically, I think that this is a really good matchup for Benfica. I think that they've tactically got the advantage. Obviously, in terms of overall team quality and individual quality, I think that we slightly edged that. And we'll have to just wait and see whether the individual quality can shine through, or which kind of set of players can kind of deliver on the tactics of their managers, their respective managers, and see who wins in the end. As ever, I'll be doing a live watch along for this game, so if you want to react to the game with me, come along. We've been doing these every single time we've had these games. That'll be going live at 20 to 9 PM British summer time today. We'll react to the lineups. We do bingo over there. It's always a lot of fun, so come through if you want to. If you enjoyed the video, please leave us a like. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, remember to subscribe. That's the best way to get these videos into your feed. And again, it helps support the channel and me. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever. And remember, football can be as simple as black and white.
Something ain't right, I'm drowning in the ocean. I'm still alive, but I feel the fall in my ocean. I lost the fight and now I'm finally floating, but I still try to hide my emotion. Who am I in pieces I've been broken?